TweakBox versus TutuApp versus AppValley versus Ignition versus Emus4u versus TweakDoor. Which of these third-party app stores is the best that you should be using right now for your iPhone and your iPads running iOS 12, iOS 13, of course all the iOS versions supported. So this video will be split into 3 categories. The first one will be the UI of each application. How easy is it to use for a beginner who isn't that advanced with their technology? And there will be categories. What kind of applications offer show on these services? And then finally, we're covering the amount of applications each signing service does have. One important thing to mention, you should be using all of these signing services or third-party app stores, whatever you want to call them, not just one, because if you want basically every single application that can be offered, you need to be using every single third-party app store that is available. So we're going to start with each service, talk about the UI, then we'll move to categories, then we'll move to the amount of applications. So first service is TweakBox. Now, very simple UI. We have home, apps, info. As for beginner, when you tap on apps, it's very clear what each category offers. App Store apps, TweakBox apps, Tweaked apps, and hack games. So it even has a description. So hack games, free hack games. Tweaked apps, it shows what each service does. And we tap on it, see it, we're at the top, we have a search bar, and below we have all the applications with a nice view with the application icon and the application name. And if we want to install the application, it's very simple. There is an install button, there are no redirects, and description. Unfortunately, not all applications do have a description, and the install process is very easy. When you tap on install, it shows you the install pop-up and you tap on install. So now, just to keep you informed, at the end of each category, I'll be ranking each service, which one is the best, which one is the worst, and then at the end of the video, I'll basically be talking about which third-party app store has actually won. The next one is TutuApp. Now, of course, TutuApp VIP does cost money, so UI is very simple to download TutuApp VIP. However, just tap on download, and then it just shows you the pop-up asking to install their service any moment now. And there you go, you see the pop-up, easy to install. Now what's special about is actually an application is that it's on the home screen, fast access easier, so of course I'll be giving extra points. However, check this out, this TutuApp version does not support the full iPad display. Older versions did, newer versions for some reason do not. So what's great about TutuApp is that we have the categories at the bottom. TweakBox was you tap on an apps, and then in the middle of the page you see all the categories. However, we also have a home page, so that is the advantage compared to TweakBox. And at the bottom we have games, we have apps, and then we have a home which basically shows when the TutuApp will expire, and you can see purchase records. So it's very interesting. Moreover, it does show the most popular applications right now at the time. And then we also have a section for hacks. So we have Pokemon Go hack, Movie Box hack, and if we just tap into the service, you can see here that there is a description for every single application with pictures. So UI for TutuApp is insanely good as far as cons could go. Well, I'm English, so when I see an application in Arabic, I don't really care about it. Moreover, I've never heard of this Pokemon game, nor have I heard of this Pokemon game, so I'm not very interested in these applications. Otherwise, TutuApp is very solid. So let's have a look at AppValley's UI. So you can see here that this looks a lot like the App Store, which is a positive. You can see here that we do have the home page, just like TutuApp. We can see featured applications, most likely applications which are popular, and then we also have sections. So we have the Tweaks apps on the home page, and then we also have the recommended applications. Now unfortunately, I don't think this is based on the amount of downloads. I think it's based on just random applications selected from the pool, or maybe it's the editor's choice. However, we don't know, so that's going to be a con. Let's have a check. Does it actually show a description? We can see here we do have the preview, and we also have a description for the applications. That is a positive. However, with TutuApp and other services, with TutuApp and the App Store, when you tap on these buttons, just bring you to the home page. However, we have to manually tap back, so marks will be deducted when going to the final overview. But the home page, it looks a lot like the App Store, so everyone's used the App Store, right? So this really is an awesome UI. And the games, you can see here that it is, categorized properly. We have Tweak games, page and other games, then we have all games at the bottom. The exact same with applications, and we have the search at the bottom right with the search bar, nice and easily to access. We also have updates, so when a hack is updated or any application from this third-party app store, we see here that all of these updates are available. So the UI is very good. The only con is that, when you tap on these buttons again, so let's say if I scroll down here, maybe I tap get on this application. If I tap on app, it doesn't bring me back to the app section, so that'll be a con. Otherwise, it's actually insane. We also have light and dark mode, so another positive there. Looking at Ignition now, we can see here that the homepage is very clean. Of course, there is an advertisement there, but all applications that aren't TutuApp VIP need advertisements to keep their service alive. So you can see here the categories are at the bottom. We have the search here, and then we also have the news. We also have here, this is where the main applications are. However, it would be nice if there was, a name for what this actually does, because I thought, this could have been apps and this could have been games. However, all the categories are based in here. To the end user, they actually have to physically tap on these, buttons before they actually figure this out. So, unlike the other services, we have a lot more categories, so this is niched down. So, we have all applications, so this is a pool of every single application available. And again, with AppValley, when you tap on this again, it doesn't bring you to the home page of the menu like the App Store does, so that's slightly, disappointing, but that'll be a con. Now the categories are very, fine. So we have App Store, emulators, entertainment, experimental, which used to have a description next to it. We have games, jailbreaks, social, tweaked, unknown, and utilities. So these applications, these categories are very clear, excluding, experimental. It'd be nice if we know what these actually are. Maybe a description, belong here would be good. So we're gonna have to talk about con, because right now I have no idea what to expect. And right now I see there's absolutely nothing. Let's just try, tap on A. So this category, because there's nothing here, should just be removed, right? If we go to utilities, see here we have the main applications here. However, search is at the top, so if you want to search it up, there you go. Overall, a very solid UI. However, it would be nice if maybe, these categories could potentially be here. However, it is niched down, so probably that isn't the best. However, I would like to know what these categories are by having, a name tag, and also I would like a description of, these categories right here. Of course, some of them are self-explanatory. Other experimental, for example, it doesn't actually have anything in there. So why is it, in this application? Shouldn't you be removing it by now? And the search, these applications here, maybe if it was like, it took users' data and it gave you recommended applications based on what other people were searching, that would be excellent. However, none of these signing services or third-party app stores do that, so I will not be talking about it here. Now, the next service is Emus4u. Don't get fooled. Actually, a con would be that it's called Emus4u because it isn't just emulators for iPhone and iPad running iOS. So the bomb, very clear. We have homes, we have apps, and we have help. It's not, complex. It's very simple. However, one problem is that, if I want to find jailbreaks, we have to scroll all the way down. And of course, yes, there aren't that many applications on this service. It only has the important ones. However, at the end of the day, if these jailbreaks utilities were in a subcategory, just like Ignition, so if it looked like this, however, it was on Emus4u, that would be awesome. So it's very clear what the categories are. So we have emulators, you see the emulators here. And then we have streaming apps, so these are your MovieBox and all that good stuff. Do remember that MovieBox has been taken down. I would recommend you use Kota Movies or MediaBox. As if we scrolled way down, we also have the TweakDoor, so the plus applications. However, look at that, I can't read that. Can you read that? I'm assuming it says TweakDoor, it might not. So that is a disadvantage that, the UI isn't perfect. And then we also have the jailbreaks. Unfortunately, where's my iOS 10 jailbreaks? Where's my iOS 9 jailbreaks? Where's my, Atasian iOS 8 jailbreak? There should be more jailbreaks here. And then we also have utilities. So UI is very simple. However, it's not perfect. So minimalistic is a nice thing. However, it's a bit too minimalistic and there isn't that much to talk about. However, because it's simple, it is also good at the same time. So finally, we're going to be talking about TweakDoor before we move to the amount of applications each service does have. So we have sections. There is no application section. It's just one home page, and just like AppValley, TweakDoor does just look like the App Store, which is awesome, and it definitely does help out. And it also does have dark mode, which is really nice. So you can see that they did take a lot of inspiration from AppValley. So we scroll all the way down, and the disadvantage is that they aren't separate categories. Like ignition, again, you have these categories you tap on and it's fast access. However, with TweakDoor, we have to scroll all the way down to get our applications of choice. So we have music apps, we have jailbreaks, and look at this, we have a lot more jailbreak apps. However, 4 isn't required. 4 is literally Electra. Uncover jailbreak. We don't need the dark mode. I have one or the other, not both. And also, where's our iOS 10 jailbreaks? Again, same story with the Emus4u. We also have the games, which there aren't that many games. I'll be honest, they should ask which games are the most popular, and they should add that. I know that GTA San Andreas is extremely popular, although I do know Minecraft and NBA are extremely popular as well. However, again, we also have Clash of Clans and Clash Royale. I don't know these are hacks. Full resource, what does that mean? I know it's a hack because I've used it personally. However, to the end user, how on earth do they know that? Maybe a game section and then the hack game section would be far better. And then we have social. These are our plus applications. Where is the the important ones? Well, actually, they're above. Why aren't these all the way up here where the tweaked apps are? They are social apps. These are social apps here. But then also remember, at the exact same time, all these applications are social apps. So what's going on? It's very confusing. So we also have media, and what's special about TweakDoor is that we have the KineMaster Plus+, the FaceTune Plus+. We have all these services which honestly are very rare to find on the other services. So we have unique applications, although that is not really important about UI. So overall, unfortunately, it doesn't have categories that are easy access. You have to scroll all the way down to find your applications, and there is no search bar, so you can't search for the exact application. You have to search through manually. So let's conclude with the UI and categories. So for ranking number 1, in my opinion, I would rank TutuApp VIP as number 1. The reasoning is it looks just like the App Store. It does tell you the most popular applications, and it's TutuApp. Most of us who used it, and it's very familiar, and the reality is the UI is very simple. And then in second place, I would give this to Ignition. Okay, advantage is you can't see what this does. However, once you know the first time, you will know every other time. And quite frankly, Ignition has very niche down categories, so App Store emulators. However, experimental should just be gone. But other than that, really amazing UI, and it's in dark mode as well. And now the next one will be AppValley. So AppValley, again, it does look just like the App Store. If you use the App Store, you know how to use AppValley. However, again, the disadvantage I was talking about earlier, when you go into like an app and you tap on the games button, it doesn't bring it back to the home screen. So that is an unfortunate event. However, otherwise, really solid. And then right after it, just slightly behind in my opinion, I would say TweakBox. These app sections, and there's this bug here right now that I've never experienced before, but if we just go to the app sections, it's just too vague, and there's also no description for each application. Moreover, if we go here, we can't actually, some of them do have description. However, it is not universal for each application. We also don't have a preview of these applications, which is present on the other services. So that is a big downfall. And then behind it, I would say Emus4u. Emus4u is very simple. However, when it's competing with TweakBox, TutuApp, Ignition, simple isn't good enough, quite frankly. So unfortunately, yes, it is simple. However, there is no search bar. You have to find everything manually. And the reality is that it's kind of like, it shouldn't be a one page. There should be subcategories for fast access. Then behind that, it's going to be TweakDoor. These Emus4u and TweakDoor is kind of close. However, TweakDoor looks like more of the App Store. So that is why it ranks slightly higher than these other services. So now finally, let's move to the amount of applications they have. So this isn't talking about necessarily do they have the plus apps. do they have the other types of app? This is just, do these signing services have in total? So I need to count it up. Yes, I will count it up and I'll be back. Alright, so now it's time to do, I'm going to go from bottom of the list to the top of the list, and the number 1 spot and the number 2 spot will surprise you big time. So last place for applications, Emus4u only has 55 applications exactly, and I mean 55 applications, they might be the exact apps you need. However, for most people, we're all different, and unfortunately I do not believe that Emus4u has enough applications for most end users. And shortly after it, we have TweakDoor. So TweakDoor has 75 exact applications. So, I mean, there you go, quite unfortunate. But now the exponential jump is here. So Ignition is behind it, and I counted around 350 applications. So, this is more apps than TweakDoor and Emus4u combined, right? So, I mean, there are a lot of applications, and I believe that Ignition does have the most important applications, whether they are missing a bunch of the paid applications available to download. However, check this out. You think 350 for Ignition, 55 for Emus4u, and 75 for TweakDoor. Guess how many AppValley has, which is in the next spot? Maybe 700? I don't know. Well, this service has 1,700 apps plus, okay? So I did actually record some time ago a very similar video basically reviewing every single service. However, I never uploaded that, so I took the old footage and I saw that it had more than 1,700. I didn't get an exact number because the reality is that when it's so high, I am manually having to count it, and I don't have years. If I wanted to count every single one, I'd be here, maybe midnight. So that's why I haven't counted every single application. However, it is a minimum of 1,700. But check this out. Now you thought that AppValley 1,700 was good. Well, what if I counted AppValley, Ignition, Emus4u and TweakDoor combined, and then doubled that? Well, not kind of double that, times it by 1.5. This is where TweakBox comes in. TweakBox has, oh my god, it's insane, 3,500 plus applications available to download. If you want an application, it will be on TweakBox. But remember, this isn't number 1. But it's honestly insane that they have so many applications. It's mind-blowing. This probably means that it has a lot of games that are for free, on this third-party store. And it most likely has all the tweaked apps. I was just, counting 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And I counted 3,500 plus. But guess what? Number 1 is TutuApp. And TutuApp is mind-blowing. So I counted 10,000 plus. 10,000 plus. Just keep that in your brain. 10,000 plus applications are on TutuApp, which is, it's kind of surprising, honestly. But I mean, it's awesome, I guess. Unfortunately, only TutuApp VIP is available. But imagine TutuApp Free was available. Everyone would be using this. No one would use other services, and I don't know what to say. So TutuApp does win by a large margin. I guess that is to be expected, as it is a paid service. So we're in order with our two, categories, UI categories and the amount of applications. Which services win? So we're going to start from last, and then we're going to go to first. So enjoy it last. I would say Emus4u and TweakDoor are last. Now, the UI is far too simple. There isn't a search bar for each application or services or third-party app store, whatever you want to call them. And moreover, they have barely any applications, 75 and 55 for these two services. So unfortunate. However, if they have the applications you need, then excellent, you can download them right away. Now, every tutorial for every service shown will be in the description and that pinned comment. So there you go. Now, in next place, I would say Ignition. Now, the thing is, all these other services, so Ignition, AppValley, TweakBox, and TutuApp, they are honestly really good. However, the UI is probably better on Ignition than AppValley, TweakBox, and TutuApp. However, you have to remember, this service has 350 apps. The other services have 1,700, 3,500, and then TutuApp is just insane. So the reality is, because it doesn't have enough applications to download, while the UI is really solid, and it is, in my opinion, better than AppValley and TweakBox is, unfortunately, I do have to rank it lower than those services. So the next service on the list is AppValley. So it's coming in at third place. However, would I give it a medal? I don't know. It does have that bug where when you tap on apps and it just doesn't bring you back like it does in the App Store. However, 1,700 apps. That's insane. That's really good, And honestly, the UI is decent. Anyone who picks up this, service will be able to use the UI. I don't know why that triggered Twitter, but there you go. Honestly, really solid service. Just the UI needs an improvement, and 1,700 apps. Of course, it won't have every single app. It won't have the niche apps like, I don't know, maybe Call of Duty Strike Team. Have you heard of that game? You probably haven't. That's a very niche application, so it probably doesn't have it. So right after, it's very close. However, I'm gonna have to give it to TweakBox. So number 2, TweakBox. Reasoning is the UI isn't as good as Ignition or AppValley. However, it has so many more applications. It has more applications than AppValley, Ignition, Emus4u, and TweakDoor combined. Think about that. That's insane. The UI is very solid. However, it isn't the best because I prefer more categories, and I'd also like a picture of each service that I'm using. What is, what application does this do? What does Animoji Studio do? I want pictures of each app. However, they do have 3,500 apps on their store, so that'll take a very long time. But it's just an inconvenience. I want to know what these apps are doing. I want a picture, and of course there is a description for these apps. However, not all of them do have a description, which is a downfall. And you probably guessed it. And number 1, TutuApp. TutuApp has by far the best UI. It is the most well-known service out of all these competition, and it has the most amount of applications. Where can you go wrong? You can't. So TutuApp does win by a large margin. So there you go. You should be using TutuApp as your main signing service. However, here's the downfall. TutuApp costs money, and if TutuApp didn't cost money, this would be by far the best everyone would be using it. However, TutuApp does cost money. So which service should you be using if you're not using TutuApp? Well, in my opinion, I'll choose TweakBox, AppValley, and Ignition. I wouldn't use Emus4u or TweakDoor because the reality is TweakDoor, Emus4u, all those apps are present on Ignition, TweakBox, and AppValley. So there you go. In my opinion, if you don't want to spend money, get TweakBox, AppValley, and Ignition. That is the best third-party app store. So TutuApp versus Ignition versus TweakBox versus AppValley versus TweakDoor versus Emus4u. Of course, I can't mention every single store. There is a lot more stores available on the internet, but there you go. That's just my personal opinion. Enjoy it, guys, and peace out.